Okay, so we'll start today from where we left off last week. We are reading Dr. K.C.Vardachari's Volume 1, Introduction to Basic Writings of Sri Ramchandraji. Sri Ramchandraji in the Reality at Dawn presents a simple philosophy of the Sahaj Marg, which could help everyone to become normal, undepressed, unrepressed, and unrepressed, detensioned, and happy even amid the chaos that is shrouding the world today. The ethics of Sahaj Marg consist in its being the preparation and practice of spiritual life. It has been held that before one undertakes the practice of yoga, one should possess or cultivate the fourfold means, sadhana chatustya, as pointed out in the Reality at Dawn, which is viveka, vairagya, sama and dama, uprati, titiksha, shraddha, and samadhana. The Vedantic explanations are slightly different from those adopted by yoga. In any case, everyone is agreed that it is necessary to awaken to the sense of temporary and permanent, out of which the others follow necessarily. The yogic transmission of highest consciousness, which becomes the divine censor within our conscience, make the following of several steps of moral reformation easy. This will do the right. Knowing the right is all that is necessary. One should not be in the state of mind of many a weakling. I know what is right, yes, but am unable to follow it. I know what is wrong or evil, but am unable to resist doing it. This predicament of moral degenerate like Duryodhana is made impossible once the individual comes into the path of spiritual regeneration and evolution through spiritual transmission. Shall we stop here for a minute?
Yeah, we can just. So this is what we covered. We had covered till last time, and this is the key, right? The will to do the right, knowing the right is all that necessary. And this is the shloka in Mahabharata somewhere where Duryodhana says this: I know what is righteous, but I am unable to follow it, and I know what is wrong, but I am unable to resist doing it. And this is what we all need to come out. Yeah, we can go ahead.
Okay. All yoga involves the practice of self-restraining, yama, in all conduct and certain basic observance, niyama. The commentary on 10 commandments expounds at length the commandments or directions for daily routine observance by every abhyasi. One should practice this consistently and uniformly with the feeling that all that is pleasing to the divine. Love dictates the moral life rather than mere duty. Thus, one is instructed to rise early and offer prayer to God at fixed hours, sitting in a pose which is convenient for meditation on the heart. One should have the goal steadily before one's mind, this goal being the ultimate condition of reality itself. One must become more and more identical with nature, the ultimate superfine superconsciousness state of reality. This is known to be plain and simple and capable of producing and maintaining sublime peace. Love for the ultimate is most necessary, but it is also something that grows in and through the practice of spiritual reception of transmission from the Master. Faith also grows, and so too constant remembrance of the divine and the Master. The fifth commandment affirms the necessity to speak the truth, be truthful. This is the most important element of principle of Yama. Be honest with oneself refers to asteya. Be not revengeful for wrongs done by others refers to ahimsa. To treat all people as brethren is to practice aparigraha, which is non-robbery. To treat all as shares in God's bounty. To eat divine prasada or offering made to God is to have contentment as well. One should accept all wrongs and sufferings and miseries and diseases even as gifts of God. They have to be accepted with gratitude as heavenly gifts. Above all, the ethical person should practice repentance for the wrongs one does or has committed and shun once and for all their repetition. Thus, spiritual ethics does not exalt the necessity to choose and discern and weigh and act. He is not concerned with the problem of choice between the pleasure and unpleasure, good and evil, understood as productive of pleasure or pain, misery or happiness, wealth or ill. His goal being the realization of the ultimate reality, which has been chosen as such. There is one necessity, the necessity to feel the omnipresence of one divine in all one's life and moving and being.
So, ilth is a new word I found. Wealth or ilth. And it's interesting how he correlates the commandments with Satya, Ahimsa, Asteya, Parigraha.
That's a very good correlation between them. Anyone else want to share anything? What we have read so far? Last paragraph also what we read, it puts stress on the fact that spiritual ethics, they demand that there should not be any need for us to choose. Whatever is coming, need to accept. Okay, I'll read for. Sri Ramchandraji has beautifully explained the commandments not as vidhis, inviolable obligations, but as basic observance which helped spiritual progress. Any deviation only causes delay and one's cooperation with his master or guru is obviously necessary. This is all that is needed on the individual's part. It is his effort, yatna, which will help the speedily progress of his evolution. Through the Guru's transmission, do the Guru's transmission would do all these too. The individual conscious collaboration is a valuable on the path. In this sense, these are commandments. These commandments do not prescribe or proscribe any duties or acts which are against the decent behavior of persons who wish to live a good life among men and society. The virtues which are requisite are universal virtues. There is no prescription that men should, on becoming spiritual, be beyond good and evil moralities. On the contrary, it is clear that no one can be said to live a normal life that creates tensions within himself and his environment. The goal, if attaining the highest good, which is liberation of freedom from all miseries and perfection of one's spiritual nature, determines the inner voice, which indeed the divine awakened within by the spiritual transmission. One's awakening of the divine within and hearing the inner voice is a true moral attainment which will be in tune with the divine nature. The real moral life arises from the surrender that one makes to the ultimate reality, giving up oneself in all one's nature to its realization. Surrendering oneself to the divine force and reality also means the recognition that one is by oneself incompetent to pursue it integrally. It is not merely the resignation of oneself to the fate in things, but a willing acceptance of the hazards on the path of integral spirituality till the final goal is reached. It is true that doubts and skepticism may arise on the path of spiritual evolution, as in every other walk of life, but they may be recognized as merely the testing periods of progress made and the steadiness acquired so far thanks to the transmission of the Guru. In a sense, they are verily the stepping stones to the success. There is no pessimism on this path, since the path is a great moral antidepressant and anti-tensionist. The spiritual utterly exposes the moral pathology of repression and conditioning and possibly makes the downward movement to antisocial and criminal behavior impossible. But these are not merely large claims. A moral or spiritual transmission of man must involve these. If religious codes have failed, as we can see the religious pathology, it is because they have not taken men seriously for the transformation and provided outlets for social pathology. Quite a loaded narration.
Yeah. So here now the more introduction to the 10 commandments ends, and then now efficacy of Raj Yoga starts from the next paragraph.
In this paragraph, there is one line, right? It is not merely the resignation of oneself to the fate of the things, but a willing acceptance of the hazards on the path of integral spirituality. In the sense, like, is Master talking about the hazards or the situations we encounter during our spiritual life, or is it the ups and downs in life that we encounter on the path of integral spirituality till the final goal? This hazards basically is it related to the spiritual journey, or integrated with the normal mundane life? Any thoughts?
Where is this line, Ravi?
Exactly there, actually, like it is in the same, it is not merely the resignation of oneself to the fate of the things, but the willing accept of the hazards on the path of the integral spirituality. Hazards on the path of integral spirituality means in the various attractions or deviations, or is that the ones, or is it the ups and downs that we go through, which the circumstances pose us in our normal life?
These are like referring to Commandment 5, where
Okay.
we say, like, take miseries as divine blessings.
Yeah.
So these are those miseries which are being pointed out here. That whatever the challenges, like your spiritual life and material life.
Yeah.
If you look, what was last week when we were reading, it is the manas which is operating in both every level of our existence. It is the manas original show which is working. So from the outside, it looks like they are two different things, but essentially it is one only. So any challenge which we see as a grahastha, or any challenge we see on the path to progress towards the master, they all are being referred over here as hazards. So essentially it is the Commandment 5 which Dr. Vardachari ji is trying to point out over here. So willingness to acceptance of hazards on the path of integral spirituality means essentially there is no distinction between a material life and a spiritual life. It is all one life, one integral life. Is that okay? Like, is that what you want?
That's what, yeah. If we take the complete context of the paragraph, it is everything.
Any other questions, comments?
There is one line where he says, the spiritual utterly exposes the moral pathology of repression and conditionings, and possibly makes the downward movement to antisocial and criminal behavior impossible. So when we talk about the movement of flow from lower to upper and upper to Atman, that automatically eliminates all these vrittis from us. It's not possible for anybody to indulge into those activities. So it will automatically be taken away from one's psyche. Shall I read forward?
Yeah.
In the efficacy of Raja Yoga, Sri Ramchandraji reveals the magnitude of his discoveries in the field of yoga. Raja Yoga has been said to be the original system of practice which try to connect the divine with the help of divine thought, with the human individual mind or thought. Thought being the sovereign principle in man, the method has been called Raja Yoga or sovereign yoga. The other features of thought are not eschewed, but they are in the human being divided and disintegrated. The integral or unified divine thought takes care of all the processes in man once it is introduced into the system or organism of the seeker after ultimate emancipation. It is not the goal of yoga to attain power of control over nature, which go by the name of siddhis or miracles, nor it is the aim of yoga to attain the trance state, samadhi, whether it is called nirvikalpa or asma parajanta or savikalpaka samaparajanta. On the contrary, the goal is to attain of liberation from all material organs and outward going mind and intellect. One realizes the soul as different from its causal, astral, and physical bodies and attain the condition of being in the divine. All these activities are restored to the original condition of nature. One attains the condition of real Ishwaratva, freedom from the nature and its modification. The efficacy of Raja Yoga. In the efficacy of Raja Yoga, Sri Ramchandraji reveals the levels or regions of heart, mind, and central regions to be placed even within the human anatomy. It means that as in the cosmos, so also in the individual. The regions are interconnected or reproduced yatha brahmanda tatha prinda. As in the macrocosm, so too in the microcosm. This metaphysical mystic assumption is now being more and more recognized by science itself, as shown most lucidly by Professor Aaron Harris in his monumental work, Foundation of Metaphysics of Science. The previous thinkers stopped with the mind region and did not realize that there was the central region and the center. The conception of levels of super existence in close conformity with the ultimate reality within the human organism itself is astounding and amazing. But making it amenable to experience is what makes the formulation of Raja Yoga unique. It is not a mere conception, but like the modern discoveries in outer space, it is direct verifiable with the help of divine thought instrument, which can be transmitted to the center under well-defined condition and under the guidance of the Guru. It is shown how the human consciousness, which is at the gross stage, tied down to outer objects and need of the body, can be transcended at the heart region. The heart region holds the key to the evolution as it is known by all to be the key organ wherein the soul and the divine dwell, to be awakened. Thus, we appeal to the heart rather than to the head. The living being is known by the heart rather than by its head. The Raja Yoga begins with the awakening of gross heart to the divine vibration of the transmission, and since the transmission is of the nature of divine love, and the transmission is of the nature of the divine love, the heart begins to glow with the light of the divine thought within it. The purification of points near the heart helps the perception or vision of the light within. The calm and lightness follow almost very soon. The individual awakens to the real task in birth. It begins to seek and aspire strongly for the divine life. Through several centers or points, which Sri Ramchandraji calls knots, granthis. The soul, illumined by the divine thought, begins to travel upward to the region known as mind region. Of course, this region is an inversion of the heart region, but it is a rarefied superfine consciousness that prevails in this region, which is already connected itself with the cosmic region beyond the body. This region is said to be so vast, comprising all the cosmos, that it would take millions of years for souls to cross it. It may appear on the physiological scale to be very small, but experiential and evolutionary scale would put it in terms of perhaps cosmic distances. But with the help of divine transmission, though it is possible to pass through these regions almost within few decades. This is the field of cosmic energies, and as such is known as Brahmanda. One may venture further to imagine that the higher levels of areas are per Brahmanda. In fact, Sri Ramchandraji holds that very few, if at all, among the yogis of the past have gone so far as that. So there is this footnote which talks about it tells what exactly is the existence, how the knots got formed into it. So existence comprises all the various forms and conditions in which different elements appear to us. At the time of creation of origin, where from the current began to flow out, was cold because it was unalloyed with matter. As they flowed out, they gave out jerks which went on multiplying. These jerks occurred mostly at the point where from the process of creation has started. It will be more comprehensible if, for the sake of understanding, we divide it into three parts. When the coolness got extended up to the limit, where it started generating heat mostly by its own action, therefrom it began to assume the differential form. It was, of course, the central part. Now, the same central part came to our lot in the form of granthis, knots. There we find some rings in it, circling rings in it. To be more plain, I may frankly say that the very root element now by itself turned into knot. And owing to the multiplicity of action and counteractions, assumed such denseness as to transform into matter. Now we are absorbed in it through our thought and are wandering around it so that we may be able to proceed onwards. You may want to read Dharmesh from this point onwards.
Yeah, sure. What he now unfolds is a region which is beyond this region itself. It is the central region which comprises the first primal thought force, Ksho, radiating from the center. The primal impulsion in the form of the superfine vibration forms bright rings, 7 in number, the outermost being the limit of the brightness and extraordinary, unimaginable, indescribable consciousness. This may be the bright world to which the liberated ones go after death. One who crosses into it with the help of the Guru no longer returns to the dark worlds and the worlds of Maya or reversed realities. Surely the Master or Guru alone can do this for man. Individual efforts hardly avails at this stage. Superb description of this region makes it almost beyond man's reach in one life. But for the divine thought force, nothing is impossible. It can take up it can take one up till its own starting point, namely Kshob, primal impulsion. Of course, no one enters into the center, which is, in one sense, the refutation of all Kshob with which thought is concerned. One who goes beyond enters a zone of reality that is beyond thought and which has variously been named zero, which is not what Buddha called the Shunya. More truly, it could be called the absolute God. In any case, this bright region of splendor was not accessible for experience or indwelling to those who were embodied up to now. Sri Ramchandraji affirms that this is possible and reveals a new dimension in spiritual ascent and evolution. Though this region is intended for the divine incarnations and special personality or personalities who is said to be there only one at any time. It is now possible to have that superfine super consciousness for any embodied being who has adequate faith and Guru's grace. These three regions of the heart, mind, and central are very important landmarks and help us to understand full potentialities of this path of Raj Yoga. In this sense, there can be no yoga without being assisted by the two yogas of Prapatti or Sharanagati and Dhyana. We take a pause here. Anyone wants to add or ask? Because after this, it's starting with the fourth book, Towards Infinity. In the fourth book, entitled Towards Infinity, Sri Ramchandraji presents further researches into the psychic state of the human individual. He reveals that though the ancients knew of the knots, granthis, they hardly thought of them as centers of power or batteries wherein the transformation of one kind of power happens into another and one kind of vibrations is modified or reversed into another. In fact, it is crucial that one should know how one kind of force transforms itself into another and how the subtle becomes gross and so on. It is the greatest psychic discovery of the present times. The knots are precisely centers to which we should pay attention in yoga. The divine transmission has to make the transmission of one kind of energy into another, and in the process, attend to the force released for higher evolution. The ancients knew of the knot of the heart, which they held was the knot of attainment, and insisted upon its being cut. Sri Ramchandraji shows that these knots, which appear to be so very difficult to cross over or transcend, could by this yoga be made to yield power for ascent to higher souls. They have been formed at different levels with the human organism also as in the macrocosm. These centers or knots or points are very important. They are indeed different from the causal descriptions and locations of the chakras, wheels, found in the Tantra Kundalini yogas. Though they are there in the psychic system, they are hardly relevant or useful for spiritual ascent and liberation. They are centers rather for action than meditation. So the meditation between the eyebrows, Agnya Chakra, is shown to be not helpful, if not positively a hindrance, as it provokes power of the ego. One should it at all meditate on the center above the name, the Chittalik. In any case, meditation on the heart, not perhaps the Anahat, is helpful for spiritual journey, yatra of the soul. The spiritual transmission thus loosens the knot and permits the ascent, which was closed by it when the soul came down to the gross level of human being. The researchers of Sri Ramchandraji show that there are 13 knots in the microcosm or man, and they have the same power as the macrocosmic points, so to speak. In fact, every point or every knot, when awakened to full luminosity and effulgence in transmission, the full potentialities of the center or God himself. But it requires the guiding hand and watchful eye of the master, and the awakening of the knot into action must take place with his help alone. In this work, he reveals how 5 points are placed in the chest region, in the chest that covers the heart region also, known as Pinda Pradesh. There are 4 in mind region called also the region of the supermind of God and Brahmanda. Here is the Chitlake where the mind becomes calm and collected and peace prevails. Thoughtless condition is achieved. Going beyond, one enters the field of the Prapanna, the Prabhu, and which are placed in the Parabrahman Mandal. Going to say further, going still farther on, one reaches the central region with the knots 11, 12, and 13, which is the center. In the later work, he has shown that there are 9 points at the sacral area, which are centers of desire, sexual passion, and thoughts, all pertaining to sex. He has, in addition, discovered the seat of the individual soul and the destructive eye, which is opened in times of pralaya, both individualistic and cosmic. He has been carrying on the researches on these levels assiduously and has revealed many more points which cannot be described here intelligibly to those who have not arisen to the anubhava of the central reality. There are points of conversion of atoms or ultimate particles into pure energy, which is utilized for the cosmic purposes of transmission. All these have been demonstrated by him to be within the limits of the human anubhava. Such is the work of this great master of psychical knowledge, Adhyatma Vidya, which is now being made available to all those who seek the ultimate reality and liberation, which has the peace and the passeth all understanding. His is a pioneer work, and he can fully be said to be the greatest living Rajyogi of our times, if not all times. Dr. K.C. Vardachari, MA PhD, Rajgriha, Tirupati, Andhra Pradesh. This completes the introduction by Dr. K.C.V. on the basic writings. Questions, comments?
There is one thing which I would like to share. I think it's a uh, good point for all of us to contemplate. In the starting of this article, there is this mentioning of one very interesting fact, wherein Dr. Vardachari ji says that it is the manas and the thought which is operating at all planes. So in the book, it is on page number 6. These are 2 paragraphs. I think it's a
Number 6.
these are great thoughts to contemplate and like go deep into thinking about these. So this starts with disunion with this source. Right. Over here.
Where this reality is then what is to be known?
No, reality is the ultimate ground of all manifestation.
Here, reality is the ultimate ground of all manifestation.
You turn the page. Turn the page. Yes, this disunion with this source. So in the first paragraph, he says, like, it is really the reality which is the base of all existences. And then he talks about this point, which at least to me looked, I saw it in a totally different light when we were reading it last time. He says disunion with this source and ground never really completely happens. That we are always connected with the source. But manifestation or creation happens by an inexplicable movement from this ground and source. And this force or movement, which we call a shob, is what is known as manas or thought. So this movement from the base is known as manas or thought. This is in fact what is the beginning of creative diffusion of the force, which is both thought and intelligence, and the cause of all level of manifestation. So it is essentially the shob, which is known as manas or thought, is what becomes the basis of all level of manifestations. Further, he says it is suggested that this original primal impulsion from within is the nature of living, sustaining breath or prana, which sustains all the creation for Parabrahmanda to Pinda. But it must be remembered that the original manas continues to abide in a very gross condition in the grossest sensible matter. So if you look at the matter, it is really the manas which is operating there also, which we meet with. In a serious mystical sense, one can say that all this is manas or thought, and all levels of being or manifestations are verily thought or manas. So something to ponder upon, think if we go deep more into the meaning of this, meditate on this. So what we maintain a thought normally, we say that divinity is pervading everywhere. It is there in every living, non-living, all forms of manifestations, all forms of appearances. So it is really the manas which is operating at all plane. And whatever we see, organic, inorganic structures, everything is essentially manas at the bottom of it. So something different I felt, I thought I should point it out to everyone. You all can also read. And
Thanks for sharing.
so a different definition of the manas felt. Normally we, in training programs, we call manas as the screen on which we have these perceptions, all perceptions have. But here Dr. Vardachari ji is pointing out a different fact related to manas.
Anyone else wants to share, add? Yeah, we can stop here and we'll meet next Sunday. Thank you.
Namaste everyone.